Becoming a change agent. I once asked a group of teenagers, "Who are your role models?" One girl mentioned her mother. Another kid talked about his brother. One guy was noticeably silent. I asked him whom he admired. He said quietly, "I don't have a role model." All he wanted to do was make sure he didn't turn out like the people who should have been his role models. Unfortunately, this is the case with many teens. They come from messed up families and may not have anyone to pattern their lives after. The scary thing is that bad habits such as abuse, alcoholism, and welfare dependency are often passed down from parents to kids, and as a result, dysfunctional families keep repeating themselves. Sometimes these problems go back for generations. You may come from a long line of alcohol or drug abusers. You may come from a long line of dependency on welfare. Perhaps no one in your family has ever graduated from college or even high school. The good news is that you can stop the cycle. Because you are proactive, you can change these bad habits and circumstances from being passed on. You can become a change agent and pass on good habits to future generations, starting with your own kids. A tenacious girl named Hilda shared with me how she has become her family's change agent. Education wasn't a priority in her home. There were too many other things to worry about. Says Hilda, "My mom worked in a sewing factory for very little money, and my father worked for slightly over minimum wage. I would hear them arguing over the money and how they were going to pay the rent. The highest grade my parents went to in school was the 6th grade." As a young girl, Hilda vividly remembers her dad being unable to help her with her homework because he couldn't read English. This was hard on her, and she could see the consequences of a lack of education. When Hilda was in junior high, her family moved from California back to Mexico. Hilda soon realized that there were limited educational options for her there, so she asked if she could move back to the States and live with her aunt. For the next several years, Hilda made great sacrifices to stay in school. "It was hard to be crowded into a room with my cousin," she said, "and to have to share a bed and work to pay them rent as well as to go to school, but it was worth it. Even though I had a kid and got married in high school, I kept going to school and working toward finishing my education. I wanted to prove to my dad that no matter what, he was wrong when he said that no one in our family could become a professional." Hilda will soon be graduating with a university degree in finance. She wants her educational values to be passed on to her kids. "Today, every time I can, when I'm not in school, I sit on the sofa and I read to my son. I am teaching him how to speak English and Spanish. I'm trying to save money for his education. One day he will need help with his homework, and I will be there to help him." I interviewed another 16-year-old kid named Shane from the Midwest who is also becoming a change agent in his family. Shane lives with his parents and two siblings in the projects, a low-income section of town. Although his parents are still together, they're never home. His mom smokes weed with his 12-year-old sister. His older brother failed 2 years of high school and finally dropped out. At one point, Shane had lost hope. Just when he thought he'd hit rock bottom, he got involved in a character development class at school, and it taught the 7 habits, and he began to see that there were things he could do to seize control of his life and create a future for himself. Fortunately, Shane's grandfather owned the upstairs apartment where Shane's family lived, so Shane paid him $100 a month rent, and he moved to that apartment. He now has his own sanctuary and is able to block out everything he doesn't want to be a part of on the floor below. Says Shane, "Things have gotten better now. I treat myself better and I show my self-respect. My family doesn't have very much respect for themselves. Although nobody in my family has ever gone to college, I have been accepted to 3 different universities. Everything I do now is for my future. My future is going to be different. I know I won't sit down with my 12-year-old daughter and smoke weed." You have the power within you to rise above whatever may have been passed down to you. You may not have the option of moving upstairs to escape from it all as Shane did, but you can figuratively move upstairs in your mind. No matter how bad your predicament is, you can become a change agent and create a new life for yourself and whatever may follow. Growing your proactive muscles. The following poem is a great summary of what it means to take responsibility for one's life and how a person can gradually move from a reactive to a proactive frame of mind. 5 short chapters. From There's a Hole in My Sidewalk by Portia Nelson. I walk down the street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I am lost. I am helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it is there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. I get out immediately. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. I walk down another street. You too can take responsibility for your life and stay away from potholes by flexing your proactive muscles. It's a breakthrough habit that will save your you-know-what more often than you could ever imagine. Can do. Being proactive really means two things. First, you take responsibility for your life. Second, you have a can-do attitude. Can-do is very different from no can-do. Just take a peek. Can-do people take initiative to make it happen. No can-do people wait for something to happen to them. Can-do people think about solutions and options. No can-do people think about problems and barriers. Can-do people act. No can-do people are acted upon. If you think can-do and you're creative and persistent, it's amazing what you can accomplish. During college, I remember being told that to fulfill my language requirement, I would have to take a class that I had no interest in and was meaningless to me. Instead of taking this class, however, I decided to create my own. So I put together a list of books I would read and the assignments I would do and found a teacher to sponsor me. I then went to the dean of the school and presented my case. He bought into my idea, and I completed my language requirement by taking my own self-built course. American aviator Eleanor Smith once said, "It has long since come to my attention that people of accomplishment rarely sat back and let things happen to them. They went out and happened to things." It's so true. To reach your goals in life, you must seize the initiative. If you're feeling bad about not being asked out on dates, don't just sit around and sulk. Do something about it. Find ways to meet people. Be friendly and try smiling a lot. Ask them out. They may not know how great you are. Don't wait for that perfect job to fall in your lap. Go after it. Be bold. Send out your resume. Network with people you admire. Gain experience by volunteering to work for free. If you're at a store and need assistance, don't wait for the salesperson to find you. You go find them. Some people mistake can-do for being pushy, aggressive, and obnoxious. Wrong. Can-do is courageous, persistent, and smart. Others think can-do people stretch the rules and make their own laws. Not so. Can-do thinkers are creative, enterprising, and extremely resourceful. Pia, a friend of mine, shared the following story. It took place a long time ago, but the principle of can-do is the same. I was a young journalist in a big city in Europe, working full-time as a reporter for United Press International. I was inexperienced and always nervous that I wouldn't be able to live up to the expectations of a tough and much older male press crew. The Beatles were coming to town, and to my amazement, I was appointed to cover their stay. My editor didn't know how big they were. They were the hottest thing in Europe in those days. Girls fainted by the hundreds just by their presence, and here I was going to cover their press conference. The press conference was exciting, and I was elated to be there, but I realized that everyone would have the same story. I needed something more, something meaty, something that really would make the front page. One by one, all the experienced reporters went back to their papers to report that the Beatles went up to their rooms. I stayed behind. I've got to figure out a way to get to these guys, I thought, and there's no time to lose. I walked to the hotel lobby, picked up the house phone, and dialed the penthouse. I guessed they would be staying there. Their manager answered. "This is Pia Jensen from the United Press International. I would like to come talk to the Beatles," I said confidently. What did I have to lose? To my amazement, he said, "Come on up." Trembling and feeling like I had hit the jackpot, I entered the elevator and went up to the royal suites of the hotel. I was led into an area as big as an entire floor, and here they all sat, Ringo, Paul, John, and George. I gulped down my nervousness and inexperience and tried to act like a world-class reporter. I spent the next 2 hours laughing, listening, talking, writing, and having the best time of my life. They treated me royally and gave me all the attention in the world. My story was splashed on the front page of the leading newspaper in the country the next morning, and my more extended interviews with each of the Beatles appeared as a feature in most of the newspapers of the world within the next few days. When the Rolling Stones came to town after that, guess who they sent? Me, a young, female, inexperienced reporter. I used the same approach with them, and it worked, again. I soon realized what I could accomplish by being pleasantly persistent. A pattern was set in my mind, and I was convinced anything was possible. With this approach, I usually got the best story, and my news career took on a new dimension. George Bernard Shaw, the English playwright, knew all about can-do. Listen to how he got it. People are always blaming their circumstances for what they are. I don't believe in circumstances. The people who get on in this world are the people who get up and look for the circumstances they want, and if they can't find them, they make them. Pay attention to how Denise was able to create the circumstances she wanted. I know it's strange for a teenager to want to work in a library, but I really wanted that job, more than I had ever wanted anything. But they just weren't hiring. I would go to the library every day and read, hang out with my friends, and just get away from home. What better place to work than some place I already hung out at? Although I didn't have a job there, I got to know the office staff and I volunteered for special events, and pretty soon I was one of the regulars. It paid off. When they finally had an opening, I was their first choice, and I found one of the best jobs I ever had.